In 1942, acting on the directives of John D. Rockefeller Jr., wrecking crews dismantled a massive 204-room castle situated on a high bluff overlooking the Hudson River and tipped the remains into the abyss. The stone and timber from what the New York Times once recognized as the second largest private dwelling in America, outmatched in scale and cost only by George Washington Vanderbilt's Biltmore, tumbled into the water in heavy loads, coming to rest on the riverbed 40 miles north of Manhattan. The family who possessed the property possessed the means to restore it, put it on the market, or surrender it for public use. Instead, they elected to submerge it. When the crews finished their work, the bluff was left stripped of its grand residence, retaining only a series of stone footings, a handful of garden terraces, and a lone gatehouse standing sentinel along the nearby road. Biltmore, the single American home that surpassed it in magnitude, remains intact today, drawing over 1 million guests annually. The mansion that held second place rests at the bottom of the Hudson. This is the account of America's second largest private palace, discarded into the river by the dynasty that erected it. The territory that would eventually form Rockwood Hall was, for nearly a century, a portion of Phillipsburg Manor, one of the premier colonial domains of the lower Hudson Valley. Frederick Phillips had consolidated his holdings into a vast tract spanning the eastern bank of the river, and his descendants retained it through 3 generations of British rule, gathering rents, operating mills, and maintaining the lifestyle of landed gentry in a setting that must have appeared unshakable from the inside. The American Revolution abruptly tested their loyalties. The family remained steadfastly loyal to the crown, a position that proved to be among the most financially disastrous allegiances in early American history. New York State confiscated their vast holdings, and the specific woodland parcel relevant to this story, a high-timbered bluff then referred to as Beekman's Woods, passed to the Beekman family, who retained ownership into the 19th century. By the 1840s, modest improvements had been made to the bluff, including a farmhouse occupying the precise ground where the castle would later rise. Its primary resident was one of the most widely discussed officers in the United States Navy, though for reasons he never would have sought. Alexander Slidell Mackenzie had been born Alexander Slidell, adopting his maternal uncle's surname in 1837 as a prerequisite for a family inheritance, a routine piece of domestic business. What was entirely unroutine was his conduct aboard the brig USS Somers in 1842. Serving as commanding officer, Mackenzie directed the summary execution of 3 crew members suspected of mutiny while at sea. Among the hanged was a 19-year-old midshipman named Philip Spencer, whose father happened to be the sitting United States Secretary of War. A court of inquiry and a subsequent court-martial officially cleared Mackenzie of criminal liability, yet the legal exoneration failed to calm public indignation. The hangings had been carried out in open waters, far beyond the reach of any civilian court, driven solely by the judgment of a single commander, while the deceased boy's father sat in the president's cabinet. The controversy refused to fade. The stark reality that a naval captain had executed the Secretary of War's son without trial remained a fixture of national conversation for a generation. Historians credit the fallout from the Somers incident with hastening the creation of the United States Naval Academy at Annapolis in 1845, operating on the premise that young officers educated on land under close oversight would be less prone to mutiny than those confined for months on end to a vessel under an absolute authority whose judgment might prove flawed. Mackenzie was also an accomplished biographer and travel writer, as well as the brother-in-law of Commodore Matthew Perry, the officer who would later open Japan to Western trade. His brother-in-law maintained a nearby summer residence called the Moorings, illustrating how early this stretch of the Hudson had begun attracting men who had built prominent maritime careers. Mackenzie resided in his farmhouse on the bluff until his sudden death from heart disease in September 1848, after which the property was liquidated by his estate before the year reached its end. The land was acquired by a wealthy merchant who had spent the preceding 2 decades building a fortune on the opposite side of the globe. In 1848, Edwin Bartlett purchased roughly 150 acres of the former Beekman's Woods along the Albany Post Road, razed the old Mackenzie farmhouse, and set out to build a proper castle. Born in Massachusetts into a politically connected family, Bartlett sought his wealth abroad. He He served as the United States consul in Lima, Peru, and upon his return became a senior partner in the trading firm Alsop and Company in 1830, placing him directly within the lucrative flow of South American trade. In 1847, he partnered with William Henry Aspinwall, Gardiner Green Howland, and other investors to establish the Pacific Mail Steamship Company, securing a federal contract to deliver mail to the California coast just as the gold rush ignited an extraordinary demand for passenger passage. Their flagship steamer, the California, completed a demanding 17,000-mile maiden voyage around Cape Horn to San Francisco, establishing a virtual monopoly on coast-to-coast ocean transit that remained unbroken until the Transcontinental Rail Network opened in 1869. Bartlett expanded his transportation holdings, chairing the Ohio and Mississippi Railroad and serving as a director for the Panama Railroad, assembling infrastructure franchises at a relentless pace. To design his Hudson Castle, Bartlett selected Gervis Wheeler, an English-born architect who had arrived in America around 1847. Wheeler was becoming one of the era's most influential residential designers through his widely circulated pattern books, Rural Homes and Homes for the People, which popularized the Italianate and Carpenter Gothic styles for builders across the nation. For Bartlett, Wheeler created an English Gothic revival castle built from cut granite quarried directly on the property, positioned on a ridge roughly 500 feet from the river's bank and soaring high above the water to command panoramic views of the Hudson to the west and the Westchester Hills to the east. Wheeler's published pattern books subsequently carried the design across the country. Architectural historians have noted a residence in Cincinnati, Ohio, constructed in the 1860s for a local businessman, that stands as a direct, left-to-right reversed replica of the Hudson House, transmitted not through personal contact, but through printed illustrations in A. Turner's picture book, Villas on the Hudson. Bartlett designated the estate Rockwood, referencing the quarry that supplied its building stone, a clever play on the older Beekman's Woods moniker that traded the trees for the rock beneath them. The stone residence was completed in 1849, and for a decade Bartlett occupied it with appropriate grandiosity, its elevated posture intentionally chosen so that river travelers could spot the stone castle long before encountering much else. Then in 1860, seeking a change, he sold the entire property for $100,000 to his business partner and relocated to another estate named Miriam. The partner who acquired Rockwood possessed wealth that eclipsed Bartlett's own. William Henry Aspinwall was already among the richest men in the United States when he took possession. His family's merchant firm, Howland and Aspinwall, had dominated the China trade for decades, importing porcelain, silk, tea, and legal opium in record-breaking clipper ships. The firm's vessel Rainbow, launched in 1845, is regarded as the first true extreme clipper, while the Sea, which set a China to New York passage record that endured for over 150 years. Contemporary reports suggested that by 1837, Aspinwall's personal fortune surpassed that of Cornelius Vanderbilt, placing him among the elite tier of American wealth before age 40. Beyond Pacific Mail, Aspinwall invested heavily in the Panama Railway, the first transcontinental line in the Americas, completed in 1855 at a cost of $8 million and built by more than 7,000 laborers under brutal tropical conditions that claimed hundreds of lives to disease and heat. Aspinwall stepped back from active commercial life in 1856 at age 49 and focused on expanding Rockwood to roughly 200 acres. Arriving each summer aboard his private yacht, Firefly, he transformed the castle into an extraordinary private gallery, filling its rooms with paintings attributed to Velázquez, Rubens, Titian, and Leonardo da Vinci. He added a Paris-designed hall paneled in rich dark walnut that drew praise from contemporary architectural critics, ensuring every room presented its own distinct world. Beyond his private estate, Aspinwall helped establish the Metropolitan Museum of Art in 1869 and the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in 1866. During the Civil War, he executed a covert diplomatic mission to Britain funded with millions in U.S. Treasury bonds to prevent British shipbuilders from delivering ironclad warships to the Confederacy. Following his death from a heart attack in 1875, the estate passed to his son, General Lloyd Aspinwall, a Civil War veteran and founding president of Georgia's elite Jekyll Island Club. Upon Lloyd's death in 1886, Rockwood was put up for sale. The buyer in 1886 paid $150,000, a sum comparable to what Bartlett had spent decades earlier, and arrived with ambitions that dwarfed everything previously done on the bluff. William Avery Rockefeller Jr. had grown up knowing two startling truths about his father that the public would only learn much later. The elder Rockefeller was a bigamist who earned his living as a roaming confidence man selling fraudulent cancer cures under an assumed name. The son who emerged from that chaotic household, born in central New York in 1841, grew into one of the wealthiest men in American history. Starting at 16 as a bookkeeper in Cleveland, William opened a produce business at 21 and entered the oil refining trade in 1865. 2 years later, his refinery merged into the partnership run by his older brother, John D. Rockefeller, with William taking charge of the firm's New York export business. That enterprise became Standard Oil in 1870, and William served as its chief New York representative until the Supreme Court broke up the trust in 1911. Beyond oil, William accumulated major stakes in transcontinental railroads, utilities, and banking, helping build National City Bank into a central financial pillar. Alongside figures like Edward H. Harriman and Jacob Schiff, he controlled major rail corridors including the Union Pacific. His financial alliances ran deep. His sons married the daughters of National City Bank President James Stillman, uniting banking and oil into a single dynastic interest. In the late 1890s, William and Standard Oil principal Henry H. Rogers formed the Amalgamated Copper Mining Company, acquiring the Montana copper assets of Marcus Daly for $39 million, transferring them to a paper holding company capitalized at $75 million, borrowing against the stock, and pocketing $36 million in profit without committing personal capital. By 1918, Forbes listed Williams' personal wealth at $150 million, tying him for fourth place nationally behind Andrew Carnegie and his brother John. Williams' purchase of Rockwood in 1886 persuaded his brother John to build his own adjacent Kykuit estate in Pecanico Hills, establishing the family's long-standing presence in Westchester County. John's finished house was a distinguished 40-room residence set on 200 acres. William looked at it and resolved to construct something far larger. His first step was clearing the existing site. Historical accounts differ on whether he radically altered the Bartlett Aspinwall stone structure or completely razed it to recycle the stone into new stables. Though Rockefeller insisted, he ordered a total rebuild. He hired New York architect Ebenezer L. Roberts to oversee the project, but Roberts died in 1890 mid-construction, leaving behind a half-finished 204-room structure. To complete the massive home, Rockefeller engaged Carrere and Hastings, the rising star architectural duo who had trained at the École des Beaux-Arts and worked at McKim, Mead & White. The firm was rapidly becoming the preferred choice for America's industrial elite, eventually designing the New York Public Library, as well as mansions for the Vanderbilts, Fricks, and Harrimans. For the surrounding landscape, Rockefeller turned to Frederick Law Olmsted, the legendary designer of Central Park, who was near the end of his distinguished career. Olmsted laid out 26 acres of formal gardens, planted extensive collections of specimen trees, and engineered miles of macadam carriage roads linking the main house to its outlying farms and stables, roads so robustly constructed that their paths survive today as public walking trails. William and his wife, Almira, expanded their land holdings through systematic acquisitions until the estate encompassed nearly 1,000 acres. The grand total for the property, the construction, and the land consolidation reached approximately $3 million in 1890s currency, an astonishing outlay at a time when the average American earned under $500 a year. When completed, the stone castle measured 174 feet by 104 feet, stood 4 stories high, and contained 204 rooms. 2 grand intersecting corridors formed the primary spine of the residence, laid with intricate mosaic tiles and paneled floor-to-ceiling in American oak beneath a cathedral glass dome that dropped colored light down into the main stairwell. The entrance hall featured carved onyx and marble surrounding a central fireplace built around a circular, 20-foot hearthstone decorated with Italian eagle motifs. Every major room possessed a distinct stylistic focus. The music room was decorated in pale green satinwood and lit by 250 electric bulbs arranged in a pattern of artistic informality. The library was paneled in rare Circassian walnut and anchored by a mantle of black Levantine marble. The breakfast room featured a ceiling painted deep blue and decorated with gilded zodiac symbols. The mansion included 21 fireplaces, 14 primary bedrooms, 15 staff rooms, and room-by-room fireproofing. A prudent feature given the wooden Tarrytown train station the family used would later burn to the ground in 1922. Movement between levels was facilitated by two Otis passenger elevators, one reserved for the family and guests, and a second used exclusively by domestic staff to move linens and supplies unseen, an architectural arrangement that ensured the intensive labor supporting the household remained invisible to its residents. The estate operated as a self-contained domain. Its three-story granite stable accommodated 40 horses and carriages. A complex of 17 greenhouses produced fresh flowers and out-of-season fruit year-round, while a stone ice house held 400 tons of ice harvested from local ponds. Near the river stood a stone boathouse linked to the main grounds by a steel pedestrian bridge spanning the New York Central Railroad tracks, leading to a private dock built for Rockefeller's steam launch. Ornamental Southdown sheep grazed on the lawns to create the atmosphere of an English estate, while a separate herd of Jersey cattle provided daily fresh milk and butter. To make his daily commute seamless, Rockefeller constructed a private rail siding and station directly on the estate grounds along the Hudson line, allowing his private train cars to run according to his personal schedule. In December 1895, the mansion hosted the lavish wedding of William's daughter, Emma, to Dr. David Hunter McAlpin Jr., an event covered extensively by the New York press as a highlight of the social season. Yet 19 years later, the family name drew fierce hostility. The Rockefellers held controlling shares in the Colorado Fuel and Iron Company, where coal miners struck in late 1913 seeking better pay and union recognition. On April 20, 1914, the conflict erupted into the Ludlow Massacre when the Colorado National Guard attacked a tent colony of striking families, resulting in over 24 deaths, including 11 children who suffocated in a burning cellar. The tragic event sparked violent unrest and public outrage across the nation. Protesters converged on Rockefeller properties in New York and Westchester, prompting local police to establish round-the-clock guards around both Rockwood Hall and Kykuit to protect the family from potential attacks. William Rockefeller died at Rockwood Hall in July 1922 at age 81, leaving a gross estate of $102 million that was reduced to roughly $50 million after debts and taxes. With his passing and his children settled elsewhere, the 204-room castle lost its function. During the late 1920s, the estate was converted into an exclusive country club, but the venture went bankrupt in 1936. The mortgage fell into foreclosure, and the vast residence sat vacant for 2 years, suffering from neglect, weather exposure, and vandalism. In 1938, John D. Rockefeller Jr., acting as the family's estate steward, bought the bankrupt club and its remaining 220 acres directly from Chase National Bank for $244,374, a tiny fraction of what his uncle had spent to construct it half a century earlier. The acquisition was a protective measure intended to keep a deteriorating structure bearing the family name from falling into the hands of speculative developers. For 3 years, John Jr. left the castle standing while considering options, but the family harbored a long-standing practice. Structures that no longer served a clear purpose were dismantled rather than left to decay as obsolete monuments. In late 1941, John Jr. issued the demolition order. Crews systematically dismantled the mansion, the granite stables, the 17 greenhouses, the boathouse, the power station, and all associated outbuildings, leaving only 2 small stone gatehouses standing. Rather than haul the tons of masonry away, workers pushed the stone and timber straight over the cliff into the Hudson River below. Crucially, the family directed the crews to preserve the surrounding landscape. The massive stone retaining walls, the mature specimen trees planted by Olmsted, the garden terraces, and the extensive network of carriage roads, ensuring the land itself would survive the destruction of the buildings. Shortly after the demolition, The empty bluff was briefly considered for historic prominence. In 1946, as the newly created United Nations searched for a permanent international headquarters, Nelson and Lawrence Rockefeller proposed donating the cleared Rockwood Hall property at no cost. However, John D. Rockefeller Jr. vetoed the plan, concerned that establishing a global headquarters adjacent to the family's remaining land at Kikit would invite endless publicity, security constraints, and surrounding commercial development. Instead, John Jr. purchased the site along Manhattan's East River for $8.5 million and donated it to the United Nations. John Jr. deeded the Rockwood property to his son Lawrence in 1946, marking the start of its transition into a public park. Lawrence, who became a prominent American conservationist, leased the acreage to New York State for public recreational use starting in the early 1970s for $1 a year, personally covering the maintenance costs. In 1998, the land was formally transferred to the state, and the former estate was incorporated into the Rockefeller State Park Preserve. Today, visitors walk along Olmsted's preserved carriage trails, passing the mansion's surviving stone foundations, open lawn terraces, and the original stone gatehouse near Route 9. Biltmore, the only private house in America built on a larger scale, remains standing in North Carolina, drawing massive crowds each year. Rockwood Hall survives as a series of low stone walls and quiet walking trails on a bluff high above the Hudson, 40 miles north of Manhattan, where the second largest residence in the country was pushed into the river by the family that constructed it.